Hello, Lily. Lily Swarn. What has it meant to you to be the first, I believe, International Beat Poet Laureate of India?
Hi, Belinda. Thank you for having me on your beautiful show. And your gorgeous smile is always a pick me up for any moment. That is a question right after my heart. You know, it's always nice to be a first at anything, but to be an international beat poet laureate meant it was like it shook me up. It woke me up with a bang. And I am forever eternally grateful to Deborah Tosin Kilday for even thinking of me and then thinking me worthy of such an honor. It brought so many eyeballs, and so many people wanted to know what beat poets are. Half the world and more did not even know what they were. So first of all, I enjoyed, introducing the thought of beat poetry to the world. And then I was very, kind of happy that what I write is according to the thoughts of those of the 50s, the great giants, right? It was nice to be, grouped in the same breath, to be referred to in the same breath as those greats. So that is what it meant to me. It meant a lot. And then, the plaque came home, and it came to India, and I opened the front door, and there was this beautiful big, shield with my name on it, and it holds pride of place in my sitting room, and it's wonderful to be this person who they made me out to be.
Uh,
Okay.
so, did you get a lot of interviews and
Yeah.
a lot of people curious about the organization, and then you got to tell them about it? And yeah.
Absolutely, that is the positive which happened. And for me personally, whenever you get an award, it means the world. But each award has its own special place, a little niche in your overflowing heart full of gratitude. And this particular award means much because it comes from this lineage. So when I was lucky that this time when I was in the US, though I come often, I got to meet so many beat poets. In fact, poet laureates of all the different states of America. And I have to tell you about this, Belinda. So I went for this festival in Connecticut, in USA. My daughter was kind enough to, see that I go, and she knew that it meant so much to me. And I traveled alone, and it was good to interact. And I was this only brown woman in a sea of very, very erudite, very, very, solemn poets. They were spoken word poets who took me by storm. They were, senior poets, musicians, and we were kind of living together, interacting, met some wonderful names, and who later even wrote blurbs for my latest book, this one, the book of peace and love poetry called a Bijuel Tiara. So this interaction with a different sensibility meant the world to me. Yeah.
So, I think that I read that your first book was published in 2017. Does that sound right? Well, did you come to poetry a little bit later in life, or that just happened to be when you got it all together and decided to publish? Or tell me something about your poetic journey, your journey with poetry.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for asking that. You see, when I was about 11, I got my first prize for writing a short story. And that kind of triggered a kind of a hunger, a thirst. And I knew, this is something I need to charter this course. This little girl knew that writing is a power which she should not let go. And then I was editor of my college magazine in the college days, and when I was graduating, doing English honors. Then when I was doing my postgraduate, I also was running a wall magazine in the university. All of that was happening, and as an army wife, I was writing columns for national newspapers. But poetry came with a big, big, what do you call, bang, when I lost my young son to cancer, which was much later. Which was, he was a 23-year-old young chap, 22 when he was diagnosed, and 23 when he passed away. And it was a jolt. It was motherhood torn apart. It was like emotions I had never connected with ever, because grief is such a personal and such a, something cataclysmic, which kind of needs a cathartic pull. And I think poetry was that catharsis. And I am grateful that words were my friends, and that I was able to, pour out a lot of stuff into what I'm told was good poetry. And that was noticed worldwide, and I got my first award, the Royal International Prize for Poetry, sitting in a tiny room, writing on social media, not even aware that it's catching, attention. And then that was also the beginning of the first book, because so much had been written by then.
Mhm.
20 January, first New Year's, the boy passed on, and then I was writing like a maniac, and words were just pulling me to themselves. And I think all that I had read or known, whether it was Punjabi, my mother tongue poetry, Sufism, Sikhism, the religion I belonged to, the Gurbani, the scriptures, they all came tumbling out in a different manner. And it took the form of a very precious book, which I'm very, very proud of. Thank you.
Um, Also, I read that you were a teacher. How long have you taught and what did you teach?
Yes, I was a young professor of English. I was about, just finished my post graduation, hadn't got my result yet, but I was already teaching girls 2, 3 years younger to me, degree classes in BA. I was teaching in an apostolic, no, it was a Sacred Heart nuns, Irish and Belgian nuns, and they ran the Sacred Heart Institution in Dalhousie in the Himalayas in India. And I was teaching English there along with the nuns, and I was staying there. That's when I got engaged. It was very, very, special, because I learned as much from the nuns as I could impart to the girls who I taught. So, and I'm still great friends with those girls who used to call me ma'am now, and who call me by my first name, and they're friends. A lot of them married army officers. It was a very exclusive finishing school kind of a college. And I was lucky to teach the last few batches, and then they did away with college, and there's only school now.
Okay,
Yeah,
so your teaching experience was early on, much earlier on.
much earlier on. And then off and on, because my husband was in the army, wherever we had a good posting, I would teach in college, but I would never stop behind, just because I had a job. I just went along with the army man wherever he was going, to the end of nowhere, and to borders, and to east and west of India, everywhere.
Yeah.
I just
Also, I read that you've been a radio show host. Tell me
all
something about that.
that was absolutely divine, Belinda. So this was in in Chapel Hill. Was it Raleigh? I think it was Raleigh. So there are 2, 3 universities around that triangle. Raleigh, Duke, Chapel Hill. So they were running a show in which they had multilingual, songs. They would talk in English, Hindi, Urdu, Punjabi, and they would, the songs were from Hindi and Punjabi and Urdu films, and they were catering to the people living here away from home and nostalgic for their own music. So I just was one of the hosts, and I had a great time, and I totally let myself go and practiced all the Urdu I knew, and let off my Punjabi, and I had more fun, I'm sure, than the show would have volunteered. I enjoyed that very much. And of course, I have been hosting a lot of poetry events and festivals. It's a passion. I started hosting shows when I was very young, still in college. Yeah.
You have a really long list of awards. Are most of those from India, or tell me something about this long list of awards? Maybe point out a few of the top ones, or a few that come to mind.
First of all, I need to be very thankful, and very, very overawed every time I look at them, in the house, and believe, and I touch them to understand. My husband still thinks, oh, it's okay, we don't even have a shelf to put them away. You know how people at home scoff at what you do. They don't really understand how enormous it is to actually be recognized for the work you did. But I would say that my peace awards, which I got for being global icon for peace, hold a great place in my heart, because I wrote a lot of poetry for peace in my, in a certain time of my life. And again, that has taken the form of this book about love and peace poetry. Being an army wife, I saw war closely. I saw orphans closely. I saw widows closely, war widows. So I realized that this is something we have to write against. So those honors from Egypt, Morocco, these places, Ghana, Nigeria, these I value very much. I also value this award which I got from Portugal and Spain for, a lot of my poetry was translated into European languages, German, Spanish, and the awards I got from there meant the world because the European world recognized my poetry. So I hold them in high esteem and close to my heart. The award my city gave me, as an icon, that means the world because, when you grow up in a place as a little girl with pigtails, romping around the rose garden and the rock garden in Chandigarh, India, and then to be recognized by them as something, it means the world. I also value, the Sahitya Academy is a government institution of India, and I have two awards from the Chandigarh Sahitya Academy for two of my books, which is big deal for me. For any writer, it's a recognition. It's like a, what can you say, a government recognition, right? So it's a different ball game altogether. So there is one for my book Rippling Moonbeams, a book of poetry, English poetry, and then also for the Divine Dialect of Flowers. Again, for different years, best poetry book of the year. Very, very grateful for that. Then there is an award from Albania, the Frank Bardi Award. So much to be thankful for. I wish I could remember it offhand and go on and on. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, would you like to tell us about your latest book and perhaps read a piece from it or another book if you'd like?
Oh, sure. Thank you. So, A Bejeweled Tiara is the ninth book. It is the fifth book of poetry. And otherwise, I have one novel, which is called The Gypsy Trail, which is about my life as an army wife, loosely based on that. That novel makes me speak a lot at military festivals and speak about it to encourage people to join the army and, how fascinating the cantonments in India were, sometimes chosen mostly by the British when they came, right? And then the whole fascinating journey we have of invaders coming into India, and Punjab is the place they came through always, right, from the north. That Gypsy Trail I like, and then I also enjoyed writing History on My Plate, which is a book of the origin and history of about 45 food items, which has been serialized in a lot of websites, in newspapers in India and abroad. And that gives me a kick because, everybody is a foodie. And, when you wonder, and I try to break a few myths that things like jalebi, samosa, they're not Indian. They come from another place and they traveled actually with armies, into India. Like a jalebi could be a donut in the West, right? It could be Zulabia in Iran. And it has its own journey, right? Like that History on My Plate. And then there is a book of Urdu poetry. Urdu was actually what my father taught me when I was very young, when India and Pakistan were one country and before the partition. And Urdu was a language everybody used to speak, right? Or write, even official. He used to make me learn Urdu poetry by rote. And I learned a lot of very, very, very exquisite words. It is the language of love, of mohabbat, of ishq, of romance. So I wrote a book of Urdu ghazals, which I think is an achievement for me personally, because to learn the meter, a ghazal has a certain meter. And I mostly enjoy writing free verse in English, and that meant a lot of learning for me. And then coming through all of that, and then with everything, I came to this book of peace and love poetry, which is a collection of poetry which I've had over the years, over many years, and a few friends helped me select it. And if you say I could read from it, or what should I read? Let me see. What would you like? A tiny love poem and a tiny war
Whatever,
poem?
whatever
Okay.
you like.
Okay. All right. So let me start with something on love, maybe. Resident. There really is no place for that coal in my eyes anymore. That's where you live, resplendent in shimmering pools, limpid and drunk on ambrosia. My mouth smiles all right, but there is hardly any place for you to hide. You gambol and frisk in the tinkling, gurgling peals of my love. It's an all consuming aura in the padded paws of the leopard, the swift flight of the soaring eagle, the snuggling coat of the Labrador, astride the gliding current of the Gulf Stream. You reside in splendor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us, Lily.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Nice to talk to you.
I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm so glad you had me here. Thank you so much.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.